Now it is time for us to move on to our first speaker of the evening, Mr. Sam Barclay. Would you like to take the stage, please?
Hi, hello, thank you. So yeah, I just wanted to start off by saying thank you for having me, and also for everyone turning up, and thank you for joining in. Yeah, it's great to be here. Just to start, I'm a graphic designer, leaning a bit more into UX UI these days, but and I've also self-published my own book called I Wonder What It's Like to Be Dyslexic. So that book, it gives you gives the reader an experience of what it feels like to struggle with reading through various different typographic elements. And actually, it's still available on my website. I don't know if it might be come up in the comments or something, but yeah. So this evening, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my story growing up, and then also a bit about why I created the book and what the book's about, and what I'm up to at the minute with it. So it all started off at school. I don't really remember too much of the early years of school, like struggling with it, but my first sort of memory is being pulled into my headmaster's office after school and being told that I just wasn't really good enough, or a bit lazy, and needed to buck my ideas up, or else I'd end up a dustbin man. Words from him, not me. And that I needed to leave his office and put my best foot forward. So I got to my mum, who was waiting for me outside of school, like tripping over my feet, trying to work out which was my best foot, my right one. I just wondered what the hell was going on, and I explained. She then dragged me back into his office, and I thought I'd done something even further wrong, but actually it turned out that it was more the start of my parents' fight for the best education available to me. And the next following week, I was in a new school that was more suited to me being dyslexic. So throughout school, it kind of goes without saying, I didn't really like being pulled out of class into different environments, being pulled away from different people. I never really wanted to do the things that I wasn't good at. I didn't see much point in doing the things that I wasn't good at. And I only wanted to concentrate on the things that I was good at. And I guess at that young age, just figured that the not so good would just figure itself out along the way, or I just wouldn't have to do them and it'd be fine. But anyway, I left school with just not enough GCSEs to start A levels. And I just thought that was the normal path to go on, because everyone was going off to college to study A levels. So yeah, I took a few more GCSEs to make up for it. And at that time at college, I didn't really go. I took one class that was photography, so I ended up being found in the darkroom more often than not, when I should have been in like media studies or English or something. Or I just wasn't in school at all, in college at all, and I was out on my BMX, where it was just a nice place for me to escape. Like, I didn't have to worry about the struggles or anything. It was something that I enjoyed and was good at, and loved taking apart bikes and putting them together, taking them apart, fixing mates' bikes. It felt like a completely different world. So after that year at college, it was kind of clear that I shouldn't really be there. And at that time, there was a big call for people working in the trade. So I ended up finding myself a apprenticeship, and got myself into a college course for plumbing. And it was 6 years as a plumber, and the entire time it felt like somewhere where I enjoyed. I liked being there. I liked doing it. And I even got to a stage in the latter part of 6 years where I was running a few building sites, and babyface me at the time, 20 odd years old, turning up with people that were twice my age, trying to run the show, which didn't really go down too well. But anyway, it was somewhere where that I just felt comfortable with. But at the same time, I kept coming across the architectural drawings and being fascinated by these drawings, and that was a career choice. That was something that you could do as a career. So I started looking at ways in which that I could become an architect, and obviously university is that route. And at the same time, my brother was building a website for an architecture firm, and I was kind of more fascinated by what he was doing, by the web design and the branding of the architectural company, rather than the architecture side of it. And plus, the sort of 7 years at university put me off a little bit. So before I knew it, I was studying graphic design at Portsmouth University. So the first few years were a bit of a struggle. I was seeking out help for dyslexia, but didn't really follow up on it too much. And I just sort of decided to go at it alone. I decided that I'd read Harry Potter in my spare time, or other books at prestige in my spare time, to like build up my reading pace, to be able to get through the books that I needed to for university on typography, type design, graphic design theory, and everything else that I needed to. And then roll on to my third year. And we got given the choice to pick a few briefs from an organization called International Society of Typographic Design. And they champion good typography and submit briefs to universities for students to take part in. And it's graded, but at the same time, it's not a competition. It's more for you to boost your skills or learn more about typography, being like a big foundation of graphic design. So anyway, I chose a brief called Book Still. And the idea of that brief was that you had to explore the idea of what a book was. And my fellow students, they were taking like their favorite books or books they had read that were interested in, or famous books, and sort of redesigning them in a way, in a beautiful way. And as much as I loved that idea and kind of wanted to design maybe a book that I'd read before, I was more fascinated in the idea of how we read these things, or how they were constructed, how they were made, and also the science behind how we read. I almost felt that the two fell in line together. So I started doing a bit of research into how in those particular areas, and I found this really cool, simple converter that would take text and put it into a simplified phonetics. And what I found really interesting was that phonetics looked very similar to how I used to spell words, given that it is how it's said rather than how it's spelled, but it's a simplified version of a very complex thing, which is phonetics. But I still didn't have in mind anything to do with designing a book on dyslexia until I made a few mock-ups and gave it to a friend of mine at university, and he, reading through the book, I didn't tell him anything about it, but he got frustrated, said he just couldn't read it. It was just annoying. Why would I do something like this? And I just suddenly realized that it was almost the same reaction I had to reading books, but almost in a different manner. And then from then on here, the concept of the book's born. And I just ended up trying to find more ways in which I could disrupt this thing of typography that I knew so well, and also language and different other tricks that I could manipulate in a way to slow people's reading down, and then even color and various different things. And those levels kind of come in, they're either quite severe or very mild, kind of emulating different strengths of dyslexia. So from that, after that, I finished uni with a first-class degree and got accommodation from the International Society of Typographic Design for the book. And after that, all I wanted to do was find a job in a studio somewhere. And because I just spent 3 years doing it, and the buzz around everyone at university, we're all doing the same thing and we all wanted the same thing. And it was kind of a pleasure to be able to do that now after 3 years hard work. And at the same time, my parents are kind of trying to convince me a little bit to publish the book, or even just explore the idea of doing it. But I couldn't see a possible way of doing it until at the time my brother introduced me to Kickstarter, which at the time was fairly big, but it's still fairly new. They're crowdfunding. So I thought it'd be a great idea. We built a campaign around the book, got it up there, got it live, and worked hard on it and managed to get featured on a few places such as Wired magazine, It's Nice That, and then Huffington Post. And on that day, on the Huffington Post, it was the most featured article of that day, which meant that you went on to Huffington Post Live, which is like their new live news channel. We then finished the campaign and ended up exceeding our target and got funding for £55,000 and sold the book all the way around the world. I ended up selling out that book, and from that I found various different audiences that were buying the book, and one in particular that I found really interesting that I never thought about when I was designing it, that parents really found it interesting to be able to get a glimpse into what their children were going through. So from there decided that it was time to add a little bit more and embellish on the book, and also flex my muscles as a graphic designer. So I added in my like short story from my parents and their experience of going through, because their story is vastly different from mine. Ended up printing that book and selling out that one, and found a bit more research on ways in which that I could develop the book. And it is the book that is now, and it's a little bit smaller, it's a little bit more novel based. I found that it needed to be a bit more in line with books that people tend to read on a daily basis. So like a typical book that you maybe buy off Amazon, to give that sort of right feeling to reading. And also the short story that runs throughout the book, I wanted to change that each time, because it was the same each time, and I didn't feel that the experiments was getting, like each experiment was getting a fair chance. So you'd typically remember sentences within the short story. But now I'm now also moving on to developing the website a little bit more with a friend of mine. We're building that out a little bit more to become more of a hub of information and resources surrounding dyslexia and typography, and to be able to give people a better understanding of how to use type and typography to give a better reading experience, not just for people that are dyslexic, but for everyone. So therefore helping everyone, and it's kind of the same sort of theory as the book, is not just helping people with dyslexia, but everyone at large. So yeah, kind of want to just take this opportunity to also ask you that if anyone does have any good resources, tips or tools or anything that they found interesting that they would want to share, then yeah, as I say, please do get in touch via my Instagram or website. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you about those different things. But yeah, anyway, thanks for listening.